Welcome to the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. Thank you so much for being here on this beautiful Friday. We are about to fly with none other than Christian Hope. Stay tuned. We'll get started right at the top of the hour. For those of you just joining us, thank you so much for being here for the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. We will get started right at the top of the hour. For those joining, thank you so much for being here for the Spirit of the Time. We will get started with Christian Hope in about a minute and a half. Welcome to Zeitgeist Design and Production. I'm Becky Kiefer, Studio Director. Here inside the Zeitgeist Creative Studio in Pasadena, California, imagination rules and time is always of the essence. This is where immersion artists Ryan Harmon and Joe Lancicero and the world's top experienced designers study the past and spin the present envisioning the future of location-based entertainment, or what we like to call UXIRL, user experiences in real life. The Spirit of the Time Zoomcast offers a sneak peek behind the themes. Each month, we move you without a ride system, inviting one incredibly talented and influential colleague aboard our time machine. We set the controls for milestone moments in that person's career and attempt to unravel the mystery of what makes a guest experience timely, yet timeless. And because we're live, you can type questions into the chat box and our passenger will answer them after the hour-long journey. Climbing aboard our time machine today is a clever concept designer and creative director who very likely conceived some of your favorite parks and attractions around the world. Christian Hope's lightning-fast brain and skillful drawing hand played starring roles in Super Mario World, The Secret Life of Pets, Beijing's Minion Land, and parts of the upcoming Epic Universe for Universal Creative. He also helped develop the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror at DCA, ESPN Zones, ABC Times Square Studios, and a reimagining of Tokyo's Adventureland for Walt Disney Imagineering, among hundreds of other gloriously imaginative experiences, some that were built and even more that were not. It's now my pleasure to introduce our time machine pilot, Zeitgeist President and Chief Creative Officer, Ryan Harmon, and Zeitgeist Executive Vice President and Chief Art Director, Joe Lancicero, along with a man who may have enjoyed an illustrious career in professional baseball had his uncle not taken him for lunch at Herbie Ryman's house, Christian Hope.
We are back.
Here we are.
Oh.
So we just returned 1964
64.
from the Grauman's Chinese Theater for the premiere of Mary Poppins.
Celebrating its 60th birthday.
Wow, what a great film.
What they told us that P.L. Travers was not invited, and there she was.
Yeah, that was crazy.
But a lot of stories there, guys.
Yeah.
Watch the new documentary on Disney Plus.
But
anyway,
we're here. Though. Christian is the most serious, funny guy
Yes.
I know.
Yes.
Why he never takes a picture that looks funny of himself, yet everything he draws and everything
I don't
he
get that
says.
he could have been a baseball player, because I think he should have been a stand-up comic.
Right.
I don't know.
Okay. I hope we're not setting the expectations too high for you to be funny.
Right.
Christian, just be Christian.
Yeah. But you are muted, Christian, so make sure that you can speak with us. Are you unmuted?
I'm unmuted now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're setting the controls.
Yeah, let's go to like 1971 or so. And
Like,
I'm actually really hungry. We're in Art
it's
Deli
happening.
in Sherman Oaks, and there's little Christian with his dad meeting Sandy Koufax. And you're like, freaking out, what is going on here? And tell us about your life in this era.
And your dad, your mom.
Oh yeah. My that was amazing. I worship baseball as a catcher. I grew up playing baseball. And of course the Los Angeles Dodgers, right? And Sandy Koufax is
Yeah.
an amazing pitcher, probably one of the best pitchers of all time. And we were at Arts Deli in Studio City. And my dad turns to me and says, "Hey, son, this is Sandy Koufax," and I nearly passed out, which was, it was an amazing thing to do, amazing moment for me, But yeah, so I grew up in Hollywood, California. Both my parents were in the entertainment business. I think we talked about this before. My mother was Lucille Ball's head accountant, what they call a controller. And
Cool.
my father and her met at Desilu Studios. If anybody knows, if old enough,
Yeah.
they produced I Love Lucy.
Yeah.
He went in with a dispute about some payroll issue, and so that's when my mother turned to her friends after he left and said, "I'm going to marry that man." And so,
Wow.
yeah, it was kind of cool. So, and
Wow.
I ended up years later working there. I had my office just about 60 feet away from where they had met for the first time. So that was kind of cool, full circle kind of issue.
That's that building on, is it Hollywood Boulevard or Sunset Boulevard, where the big sphere is on the corner?
No, that's the crossroads of the world. If you go down on Melrose a little bit further,
Melrose, that's what it is.
Melrose,
yeah.
Gower,
Yeah.
this is where Desilu was.
Yeah, but there was a sphere on the roof, right?
There's a sphere on the corner of
Yeah.
you're right. Yeah,
Wow.
you got your spheres mixed up.
I got my street.
That happens often with
Yeah,
Ryan.
yeah.
Right.
On sphere.
So,
Yeah, so that was my life growing up
wow. So it almost seems like you were predestined to end up doing what you do, because even your grandmother and your grandfather were involved in art in the industry. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, my grandfather was an Oscar-winning art director. He won the Oscar for a movie called The Merry Widow, and my grandmother met him while they were working on a film. She was a scenic painter, so she was
Wow.
the artist, and he was sort of the creative director, art director of these films. And so when I was a kid, I learned to draw and paint from her.
Wow.
I used to spend my summers down at Newport Beach, and to keep us busy, she taught us how to paint and draw in her studio. So I learned that at a very young age. And but the thing was, I wasn't that excited about it because it was kind of boring to me. And then we opened up with the meeting with Herbie Ryman. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but the thing was is years in high school, not really knowing Herbie or any of that information about how stuff gets done in the theme park business.
Yeah.
My uncle had seen some of my drawings and thought I was good enough to, maybe have a career in that. So he had lunch. We went to go have lunch with Herbie Ryman, and at a certain point, he took me into his studio and he showed me his artwork, and I could figure out right then his artwork was something that came from his imagination rather than a painting of a
Mhm.
seascape or a mountainscape or a
Yeah.
whatever.
Fruitful.
Yeah, it was his imagination.
Wow.
Translated into artwork, and that it kind of hit me right then. I go, wow, I want to do something like that. I want to figure out how, because I had all these ideas, backing up traffic in my head, and how do you get all that stuff out? And so I figured, oh, well, I can draw too. So I kind of
Yeah.
put two and two together, and there you go.
Yeah.
So who's your uncle? You said your uncle
Yeah.
took you
Yes,
to
I'm
see.
sorry. Yes, Frederick Hope. He was an art director and also art architect at Disney. He was one of the main architects who designed the Crystal Palace,
Oh,
the
wow. Yeah.
yeah. And plus he went and he did a lot of stuff in Florida and then eventually in Japan for Disney for years. Yeah, he was one of the first guys. He actually helped work on, he was a draftsman when they were doing Disneyland.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh
So
yeah.
when you weren't playing baseball at this age, you were also slapping a bass and
Oh yeah,
rocking.
I played in a band and everything. So we had a very creative musical background. Also, I've said this before. If parents out there if anybody listening has children that are creative, to really support them because I grew
Yeah.
up in a very supportive environment. I had a lot of people I could point to, obviously being in Hollywood in the
Yeah.
business that you could
Yeah.
look at as sort of idols and kind of, they would, I've been the benefactor of so much wonderful mentorship that I feel really blessed in that regard. Oh my God, there I am.
Oh my God. Wait, who's that guy with hair?
I know exactly. Yeah, yeah. That was you could tell. Everybody's like there. I think we're in our late teens, early 20s there, and because my hair was starting to thin, then I looked like a 40-year-old guy that came in to play baseball again. Yeah, yeah, that's so funny.
That's funny.
So yeah,
Thanks to God. Hey, guaranteed more embarrassing moments like that ahead, right?
it's interesting, Christian. There are so many of us that are in the industry that are musicians as well as designers and the other things we do. What to you, what's the connection between when you were making music and when you're designing something in
And
the
balsa wood
park?
models.
Yeah, yeah. How does that all connect for you?
Yeah, it's kind of intangible. You get an
Yeah.
idea for a song, or you get an idea for a drawing, or an image, a character, or whatever it is, and I don't really know the source of it. Obviously being a designer and working in this
Yeah.
field, you have assignments that you have to take care of, and you have to,
Right.
all right, we have a whatever themed land or whatever themed attraction, we have to take this IP and design an attraction based around it or whatever that is. But like when it came to music and all that stuff at a very young age, it's hard to say. When I was in high school, I I kind of left the baseball thing and got more into music and the creative arts. And then our high school really didn't have a art department, but they had a drama department. And so I joined a friend of mine and I wrote original plays. We were acted in a
Wow.
few plays, but then we wrote original plays,
Wow.
original musical actually.
Wow.
And that was the first really time that I really started feeling I could do something like this because it went off very well. It was very successful. We actually performed it at a few other schools around Burbank. And so that was the first taste of like, oh, I could apply design, environmental design,
Wow.
and music all together to create a product, essentially. That was the first kind of professional experience I had when it came to, applying your artistic skills to that. So that was
So
fun. It's
that's
odd that they really didn't have an art department because they're literally across the street from Disney Studios,
All
Providence
right.
oh,
High. Yeah, isn't that
So
crazy?
your dad, it sounds like, really wanted you to go into the sports side, and I think you mentioned you were potentially getting drafted.
Well, I was
But
being scouted. Yeah, they have a
scouted, that's what I meant.
essentially, you know, they look at the with the senior leagues and they try to identify kids that, you know, maybe going to turn into a real baseball player.
Right.
And one game that we had, the scout came by and talked to me, and I didn't know who he was. And then my dad said, "That guy's a scout for like the farm leagues." And I said, "Oh, really?" And that's when it really sunk in. I thought, "Oh my God," because I was already having ideas of like I want to do art and I want to do that stuff. And that's when I was like, "Oh no, I gotta." I got to get square with my dad. And when I told him I really wanted to get into the creative arts, he was like, he was a little bummed out because he was a real sports guy and his career was, you know, cut short because of a really bad injury to his leg. But you know, this is when I got a wonderful moment of advice from him because he said to me, he says, "All right, look, you know, after about a week or so of him not talking to me, because I was pissed off, you know, right, because he really wanted me to be a baseball player." He came to me and says, "Look, if you do this, you need to be disciplined. You know, you need to, you know, really, you know, hunker down and really, you know, take it seriously because most people think that artists and creative, you know, types are goofballs, right? They don't think they're responsible. They, you know, very few of them make money, all that other stuff. And so he said, don't let anybody ever think that of you. So you need to be disciplined, show up early, over deliver." Be that person that takes all this stuff seriously. So, you know, Joe, you mentioned that I'm a funny guy, but I'm also serious about what we do because every
Yeah,
time I walk into any project, I realize it's a serious thing in terms of financially. You know,
Right.
yeah,
for instance, you know, Universal, Disney, you are at the lead edge of a project that is going to cost millions, potentially $1 billion.
Yeah.
yeah,
You have to take that seriously. You have to,
yeah,
you know, understand that. So.
Yeah.
yeah.
Good lesson. And tell us what your father gave you these words of wisdom. Did your mother contribute as well? Any
Oh yeah,
advice
yes.
around the side?
Well, my dad was sort of Mr. You know, very serious. You know, he was a jazz musician. So I don't know if you know, you guys play music, but you know, he was a professional musician. When you do that, you have to practice constantly. So he had this
Yeah.
real strict, you know, regimen that he would practice and everything like that. My mother, on the other hand, was more of a kind of her nickname was Mrs. Hollywood. She was this flamboyant character. She had wild red hair, this crazy Irish woman. And she had more kind of gunness, you know, she was more about the fight, you know. And she told me when I was a kid, she said to me one day, I'm leaving the house, she goes, promise them, because I was going for a job interview. She goes, promise them you can ride a horse. I said, Mom, what does that mean? And she says, well, when I grew up when she came about in the film business at Paramount Studios, they would actually stand. I don't know if you've seen the Bronson Gates where there's offices up at like the third level. There used to be a window there where the producers of the film would open it up and stand there and look at the actors that were assembled there right in front of the Bronson Gate, and they of course would be in costume. And, you know, if it was a Roman epic series or whatever it was, they would be dressed in the costume of whatever the theme, because they would get like a call sheet, and they would come dressed as you know. And she said Westerns were really popular at the time, and so all these people would show up in cowboy outfits or whatever it was. And if they selected you, the first thing they would ask you is, "Can you ride a horse?" And the smart one said yes, and the dumb one said no. But the smart ones, if they said yes and they didn't know how to ride a horse, they would go learn how to ride a horse
Right.
and come back and be in the film. And
Right.
so her message to me was like kind of like a modern day, you know, fake it till you make it type
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? It was basically that, which I don't know how smart of advice that was, but she was, you know, she's very supportive that way. She's like, you know, you're smart, you can figure it out. Whatever the job is, you can figure it out. And so I had that kind of spirit too.
Yeah,
That's
I've
great.
I've read where Richard Branson, from Virgin,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
his advice is always say yes. He goes, even if you know you can't do it,
Right.
he goes, and then you'll go and you'll figure out how to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
Absolutely.
think so. I think we need a little bit more of that spirit nowadays because a
yeah,
lot of kids come out of school with like kind of a siloed into one thing that they do. And you know, the
yeah,
one thing I do, like one of the people that works with me right now, Julianne Ramadan. I see her. I think she's on this list here, but we met years ago, and the first thing I did was sort of test her out with that. Like, here, can you do this? Can you do that? And she took everything on and did it really well, and really well, by the way, too. So, you know, that kind of person to me is invaluable, especially in this
Yeah.
kind of wacky business that we have, because
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about it, right? Every project is so much different than the other. The one thing, the hallmark of our business is that every project has kind of its own unique qualities. You know, it could be
Yeah.
working on a theme park thing, or a retail shop, or a restaurant, or you know what I
Right.
mean? It runs the gambit, and you have to be versatile to
Yeah.
survive in this
Oh
business.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that attitude is key to being successful.
Mhm.
But also, I mean, we were of the generation, we were like the second generation of theme park designers, and we were fortunate, we got to learn from the guys that created
Oh
the
yeah.
industry,
Yeah.
or it was being handed down like to the Tony Baxters and the guys who,
Right.
worked directly with those guys. So I mean, we were fortunate, but there were no schools.
No.
And there was really no
Well,
courses
nothing.
in, theme design.
No.
We were learning as
You had to be
we went
thrown
along.
into
Yeah.
it
And as you said,
mentored.
Christian, every project is different. In fact, I remember I would often go home and I would say to my wife, I go, "Oh, I'm going to school today." And I by mistake, because it was always,
Yeah.
I really I thought of it
Yeah,
that way
'cause you're
because you
learning.
were always learning.
Right.
Every project you had to become kind of a semi-expert
Exactly.
in whatever subject matter that was going to be presented in that particular thing.
Right.
So
Yeah, you know the Frederick Hope, I mentioned him. His son Frederick Jr. He opened up a company with John Kasparowicz and Wayne Smith, and it was called the Only Animated Design and Display Company Incorporated.
Yeah.
And very long name, but they gave me an apprenticeship there, and I learned more in that than I did in college. I mean, because
Right.
like you say about the generationally, right, Joe? During that time I met Rolly Crump. You know,
wow,
he would come in, famous illustrators and designers and sculptors that came from Disney, Buzz Price.
Yeah.
These people, they would meet
wow.
these people. They would have this thing years ago called the dinosaur lunch, where they invite
Oh
their,
yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, they invited me to lunch to go to these people, and I was like blown away. You're meeting these people who invented this stuff, right?
Yeah.
You're sitting
Right.
with these people. And so my dad's advice to me at that point is like, shut your mouth, open your ears, open your eyes, and
Yeah.
observe. Try to learn from these people and listen to what they're, telling you, because it's invaluable
Yeah.
if you really
Yeah.
want to stay in this business and, respect it. So I
Yeah.
was Guys, I cannot tell you how blessed I was to actually have that and have an
Yeah.
interest in doing this, because it's basically like if I was a baseball player, if I got to have lunch with Sandy Koufax every day, right?
Yeah.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Amazing time.
Okay. So at the Only Animated Design and Display Company, what were some of the projects you
Yeah.
guys did?
1981 we're in right now.
Yeah, just
Right.
leaving high school. So I kind of balanced high school with this actual school, which I hated.
Yeah.
Um, we did the first thing we worked on was Auto World Flint, Michigan, was a
Mm.
ill-conceived theme park in Flint, Michigan, that I think if you ever saw the movie Roger and Me, it was featured toward the
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Okay.
It was like, yeah, we're gonna put a automobile building themed theme park in a place that's economy is going down the tube. So it only
Right, right. Where
yeah,
the industry is dying.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It only lasted like 2 years. And then the other major project was kind of similar to Chuck E. Cheese, called the Bullwinkle Restaurants, Family Food
Oh,
and
yeah.
Restaurant.
Yeah.
So yeah, that during that I actually got a chance to write some of the music, sort of bring in some of my musical experience, and did that, and did set building and all that stuff. And we opened a few of those. So yeah, those are the two big projects we did. And again, this is where I got to work with I don't know if you know Eva Andry and Catherine Jean. And I think you guys probably know
Yeah.
Yeah.
Catherine Jean. I think a little while ago you interviewed Lane
Yeah.
Dunham. She
Yeah.
was her there.
Yeah.
You worked there. Again, those are the young talent at the time. But again, this is alongside, I think I met Claudio Mazzoli, and I met all these people. It was bananas, and
Yeah.
to get to meet these people. Of course,
Wow.
I didn't know who these people were. But then they would leave, and somebody says, "Do you know who that is?" And I was like, "Oh, geez."
So let's go to 84, 85, and there you are in Buena Park, California, working with Lane. I think Eddie Sato, another
Mhm.
past passenger, had recently departed. What are you doing at Knott's?
So yeah, I went from there to from working for the only company to I had done some model building, and so I was kind of known for that at the time. And so I was hired to redo the mission models to try to figure out how to
Yeah.
redo the mission models. But those were really in bad shape, and so they didn't have enough budget. So I just kind of fixed them up a little bit. But what happened at that job is that they saw my sketches and they saw that stuff, and they said, "Oh, would you consider working in kind of like an SQS capacity, essentially, where you'd have to go through the park, and in some cases you'd have to redesign a sign, or guys, theme parks get really abused and used, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you're constantly in this cycle of having to, renovate or do that stuff, and so." That was what they called the design order system, which how that functioned was like, for instance, if somebody in like the merchandise or food facility, they would come to you to say, we need a new menu design for this, or we need this portion of the room art directed, or we need a new sign or whatever that came through the design order system, which I was in charge of. And so I had about two other people working with me, and that was our job. We just go do that. And jobs range from, designing a logo character for the Big Jake Steakhouse to uh, an interior for a ride or something like they didn't know any understanding of the range. There was no you're an expert in graphics or you're an expert in this. It's like, well, you're a creative person, figure it out. That was
Yeah.
just the thing.
And
So
you
that was
did.
my orientation to
Yeah.
the business, and
Yeah.
so that really leads into my attitude toward pretty much everything. I think I mentioned to you guys the other day that. Uh, I have the same attitude designing a logo as I do to working with Epic, creative, Universal Creative on doing an Epic Park, an entire
Right.
master plan for a, 600-acre theme park. I don't see them any different. I see them as a creative challenge, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, I remember I was also in drama in high school. And there was that old thing that there's no small parts, only small actors. And I remember that was a really good piece of advice from my drama teacher. Was like, it doesn't, you always want to give 100% to whatever you're doing because it's you. You're bringing yourself to whatever that is. So that I think that translates into what you're talking about with projects as well. And I always thought that way too.
Yeah.
And always try to find the gem, the fun thing in it. Okay, what's that? There's always a gem. That's that spoonful of sugar
Right,
idea.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's always a little bit of something in there you can hold on to, whether it's a sign or, like you said, an entire theme park. But if you can find that, then then you're going to have a good time too. And if
Right.
you're putting your positive energies into it, the end result's going to be better.
Right.
I think so. It's interesting. I heard a clip years ago. It was Frank Sinatra who, again, growing up in the business, my father told me about all the behind the scenes stories, like, the fact that Glenn Campbell came to Hollywood and would do music dates and record and play his guitar on all these songs he never got credited on. But then there was a clip that I heard that was similar, kind of behind the scenes. Frank Sinatra was brought into many recording sessions because they figured it out. He knew what the trick was of a song. He would listen to the song and he would come in to advise on what's the trick, what's the hook, what's the thing that's going to get do that. And if you can develop that sensitivity as a designer in a commercial sense, you're going to understand what's going to make things successful. And so sometimes it's not your idea. Sometimes if you're sitting in a brainstorming meeting, which we've all done, and somebody hits the idea, you go, that's the best idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can come from anybody. I was in a project one time with Julianne, actually, when we were working for Paramount. It was the I think the coordinator, one of the coordinators came up with the best idea after a bunch of expensive, creative design
Right.
brought into the room. She hit the best idea, and everybody was like stunned. And I go, guys, that's the best idea.
Yeah.
Let's do what she said. And they're like, reluctantly going, oh shit, can I bill for the same amount of money?
So Christian, being the Renaissance man that you are, even while you're working at Knott's,
Stop, Joe.
You're doing animation.
you're doing animation and
Yeah.
storyboards. Talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
Well, that's where you come from that world too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing: you put some miles on you when you work in animation, boy.
You bet. I mean, you really you have to know how to draw, and
Yes, you
it really
do.
hones your skills.
Oh yeah. When I was working at Knott's Berry Farm, how do I put this? Wanted to make more money. I think that.
Simple enough.
And so I found out through somebody I knew that they were hiring storyboard artists at at Ruby Spears, which was kind of a subsidiary kind of sort of Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah.
They were right down the street from where I lived. So I went and auditioned there and they gave me some storyboard work. And I remember I used to have to give my progress to one of the directors, and I would meet him at the racetrack, at Santa Anita racetrack, because he was
No
like
way.
How
a
fun.
gambler. So I would give him my storyboards at there, and it was really funny. The first time I actually turned in my storyboards, the guys that worked there were surprised that I showed up because they said, "Yeah, normally guys your age they get the job, but they never come back again." I said, "No, my dad always told me to
Right.
show up on time."
Right.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
Okay, so
interesting.
it's 1986,
1986. Wow.
and
We almost are ready to meet each other, all three of
yeah,
us.
yeah.
So you heard that there was a gig at Walt Disney Imagineering, which had changed its name from Wet Enterprises just 2 years prior from Eddie Sato, and you didn't have a portfolio. What?
Yeah, I had met Eddie Sato because I had seen his work. He was there at Knott's before I was, and so I saw some of his work, and I asked my cousin Fred. I go, "Dude, do you know this guy Eddie Sato? This guy's brilliant." And I see his sketches, and they're amazing. He says, "Yeah," and so we met him for dinner a little while later, and we became instant friends. Um, I never worked directly with him at Knott's Berry Farm. He'd gone a few years before I started working there. But one day he called me up and he says, "Look, they're hiring at Disney for Paris Disney." And I said, "Oh, that's kind of cool." And I was looking to kind of up my game a little bit. And what was different about that job there was purely creative. At Knott's Berry Farm, I had risen up to like almost management level. Now you got to understand, I was a kid. I was like 22 or I was really
Yeah.
young.
Wow.
Because it was a separate department, they had in a corporate structure, they had to create a department, and the first person they made sense to put in that role was me. And like I said, my hair was receding, so visually I looked like I was in my 30s. So, that worked out just fine for me. Baldness helped me in that regard. Uh, and then, so I went up there and I didn't really have a portfolio. So I was like, oh crap. I was really intimidated. I mean, I was scared. I was really scared when I went there. And the guy I met was Mike Morris. Anybody who worked at Disney? He was,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
You hired me.
yeah, he hired me.
yeah, there you go. I just came in with my little sketchbook, and handed it to him, and he looked through it and he chuckled a couple times and he goes, "Great, you're a smart guy, funny guy. Yeah, we'll hire you." That was about it. That was about the extent of it. If you recall, Mike was very sort of,
He
uh,
was chill.
Yeah.
he's very,
Yeah.
very direct and stuff like that. So that was wonderful. And I was hard to work, I guess, coming from Knott's Berry Farm because I worked on, Western type stuff. They wanted me to work on Frontierland. And I got to meet and work with Jeff Burke, Pat Burke, Karen Armitage, if you guys remember her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Ahmed Jafari was one of my mentors. The guy,
Wow.
he's an amazing dude.
Yeah.
And so they hadn't quite got their act together when it came to actually uh, designing of that area of the park. And so I ended up working on the really, really early concepts for Indiana Jones, which, if you guys recall, it was a coaster, it was a this, it was a those.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, it
right.
was so yeah, it was
Yeah.
so cool. It was going to be it was going to be the car ride that they have now, but then they're also we're going to have a coaster
Yes.
going through it. Yeah,
The
maybe
train went through it at one
yeah, and the
point.
train
Yeah.
went through it.
That
Yeah,
was
yeah.
bananas. Yeah. That was really cool. I remember seeing Eric Heschon. No, yeah, was it? Yeah. Brian Jowers did
Brian
the
Brian
Jowers.
Jowers
Oh,
did
right.
that. Yeah, he
Great.
did that
Great.
beautiful rendering of
Yeah.
that space. Yeah.
yeah. So, imagine a guy, coming from Knott's Berry Farm to all of a sudden be exposed to all this unbelievably crazy amount of stuff. And I was totally blown away.
Yeah.
And so we did that. And then Frontierland got going, and I ended up working on that. And one of the memorable moments from that was I had asked Jeff. I said, "Look, is there any ideas for what the music's going to be? Because if you recall, that ride was scarier, and it didn't seem to me like the wacky dacky, surf guitar thing was going to play for that attraction." So I got together with a friend and we created a demo tape where we made that into a waltz, that song, and the Grim Grinning Ghost into a waltz. And we played it for Eisner and those people, and it went over really well. What was nice about that is they were actually going to value engineer the project and cut budget. And I was like, no, this can't happen. So when we played it for him, we played it in front of the model and all the artwork that was done. And apparently, when he was walking out, he turned to somebody and says, "Look, leave the budget where it is." And so it was nice that that little moment was able
Wow.
to, save the project from getting cut to pieces. So
Yeah.
that
Wow.
was cool. Yeah.
So you've got this dream job. You moved up to Disney. It's 1989, and you quit. What the hell, Christian?
Uh, all right. I think the veterans on this will understand this probably better than anybody at the time. Okay, so
Yes.
we have to sort of set the table a little bit. At the
Right.
time, there
Yeah.
was no HR people. There was there was a thing called personnel,
Right.
and so that you were much less afraid of being called on t telling an off-color joke or something at a meeting, whatever.
Right.
Nowadays, it's quite the opposite, right? And so when I went into Mike Morris, I said, I want a raise and I want a job title change and stuff like that because, I was hired as a graphic designer, but now I'm doing show design stuff. I'm helping them create music tracks and all this other stuff. I'm kind of this unicorn that I don't know what I would fall into. And he says, I can't do that. And I'm like, really? Why not? And he says, how can I tell the guys at corporate, the guys who are paying you that Friday you made this much money and Monday you're going to make this much money? How do I do that? You want to, give me some advice on how do I go do that? And I said, well, what do you want me to, what am I going to do? And he goes, well, you need to quit and then maybe come back later at a higher rate. And and I know some people are, oh my God, clutching your pearls nowadays. But the reality is that's how you got a raise.
Yeah.
You know? That's
Yeah.
just how it was. It was a lot more mercenary back in the day. God, I feel like a dinosaur. Anyway, so I did that, and that's when I worked a lot with Rolly Crump. He had again, I met him back in the day, and then he knew I was available, so we worked on a ton of stuff together. Very inspiring guy. He's actually the model for how I kind of modeled my professional self because he was an amazingly talented guy, very open to ideas, other people's ideas. He could recognize something that was really good. And honestly speaking, he had his own art style, which you would not call an illustrator, you would call it the person who drew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he had a weapons grade charm, right?
Weapons grade.
Like
So
that.
He
I like
really
that.
did. I saw that in action, and I thought to myself, I better hone up on that part of it because you can get people into what you're doing a little bit more if there's a little bit of romance going
Yeah.
on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I understood that, and he really did that at an appropriate level, and he was so charming that way, and I really noticed that, and so I tried to incorporate that in sort of how because right, guys, you understand, you get up there and you have to pitch ideas all the time, and
Right.
so getting love from the audience, right, it feels
Yeah.
better, and the things go better. I've been
Yeah.
in meetings where the negative side of that is oftentimes if I've been in meetings where that love ain't coming at you, it really throws you off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is hurting. You know?
Yeah.
So
Did you ever have to pitch to OLC?
many times, yeah, yeah.
So that is a tough audience.
It's a tough audience. There's no laughing. There's
No,
no.
no, no, it's
This is
zero
great.
emotion.
There's none of that. It's
Yeah, yeah,
always
yeah,
like just
yeah,
like
yeah.
blank stares.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Also, the chairman is in the room somewhere. But prior to go to Disney, I think I told you guys I worked for Landmark Entertainment. I went over to Japan. This is where I started learning about the culture.
Oh,
Right,
right.
right,
I
right,
was
right.
pitching ideas in a meeting one time, and the same thing, crickets,
Right.
and I'm like, man, oh man, this is rough. And somebody said, well, the chairman really likes it. I go, which one was the chairman? And they go, oh, he was sitting in the back, And so in that culture at the time, the chairman would often sit in the back, just wear a regular suit and kind of blend in
Yeah,
because he liked to observe how his people were and how I
right,
treated them and they treated me.
right.
And
Yeah.
that was an interesting thing to see. And so I got that love later on in a memo. So
You got
Good
that.
text. Okay. So you left, you're working with Rolly. This is when you opened Christian Hope Design, your first company, I guess. Your
yeah,
first,
the first iteration of my own
right,
freelance business. And,
right.
I understood by that time you could make a living doing what I do. Um,
Yeah.
on a freelance basis, and again, I
Yeah.
took every and anything that came along. I designed costumes for a woman who showed up at sci-fi conventions. Her name was Mrs. UFO. I did that. That was interesting.
Wow, Mrs.
You would just basically take everything that came along, right?
Yeah,
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 of
You got
course.
bills to pay, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right. You got to
absolutely.
keep the lights on.
Yeah. So
Uh-huh.
91, ring, 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 Disney calls you back and you go back. This is your second service
And hopefully this
term,
time
right?
at a higher rate.
Yeah, at a higher rate.
Well, yeah. So during that period of 89 to 91, I had done a lot of freelance work for them. I can't remember exactly. Do you guys recall like when it was Westcott? Was that during that time?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
we
yeah,
all three of us started in 87
yeah,
Yeah.
and we stayed, you left. I remember you
yeah.
being there and then gone.
Mhm.
And then yeah, all that was going on during that
Yeah, so I
period.
did a lot of stuff for Westcott. I remember concept design for Westcott.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, kind of a blur actually. There was a ton of stuff. I mean, a typical year for me, like my invoices, I'd have 40 invoices,
Yeah.
40 or 50 invoices for jobs that were smaller level jobs. I didn't sign on to necessarily be
Mhm.
in a place for 5 months or something like that. It was like freelance jobs here and there, and I put all that stuff together, which I was very cool with. I
Yeah.
like to draw quickly. I like to do all that stuff pretty fast. I have a pretty short attention span, so I try to get stuff done quickly and turn it in. That was kind of my thing back then. I call it being a design short order cook. So,
Well, years later, you did a job with me for the city of Beverly Hills. Remember, we
yes, that's right.
designed deck
What year
nails.
was that? I can't remember
That
exactly.
was like
Yeah.
that was later in the 90s, I think 96, 97,
Yeah,
something
they
like that.
wanted kind of a shag,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Artist shag kind of look and feel to all the graphics, and that was fun.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was
They
really
did
fun.
that for a few years after that, I think I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah,
stayed for
yeah,
a while.
yeah.
It was pretty
Mhm.
cool. So let's see. Then 93, you're out again.
Yeah. Geez, I'm starting to sound like a real loser here, aren't I? Here's the
Oh,
whole thing.
anything
Here's the
but.
whole
Oh, you
thing.
got an opportunity to direct a CG
Yeah, look, I
film.
mean, when you're at a company like Disney, you're only going to progress as far as they want you to progress and
Yeah.
stuff like
Right.
that, right? And so I was impatient, so I wanted to get promoted, I wanted that, I wanted to move faster. And so when an opportunity came up to do that, design that, be the art director for this computer animated thing, if you recall, there wasn't a lot of that going around. It was
Sure.
just
No,
starting
no.
essentially. So I thought,
Right.
I need to grab this and go for it and learn about that business. And so it's actually helped me later on in life because you understand the medium,
Mhm.
so it really helped me in that regard. So quit again. And luckily, in a nice way, the advice I would give to anybody who wants to take that same route is make a lot of friends, be nice to everybody. The business is 2 blocks long. You're gonna,
Yep, yep,
you're gonna
yep.
run into people going up and run into people going down. You want
That's
to
right.
be
Yeah, that's right.
What was
Very,
the name
very
of the
good
film?
advice.
Yeah. What
uh,
was the film?
What's the film? Oh, it's called Audiana, and it was basically there to promote a high definition television system for Panasonic. It was a promotional piece
Oh, okay.
that they took
Oh,
around
wow.
a tour and stuff like that. And it was about a
Oh,
50-minute
cool.
long
Very
clip.
cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Okay. So then also in 93, you reunite with Fred and you start the works.
Yeah, we did that project at that time,
Oh, okay.
actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we did that. And I think I think I wrote in my notes to you guys, I worked on Predator. What year was that? I can't.
Oh,
Oh,
Predator?
really?
I didn't even know that. What'd you do on
I,
Predator?
yeah, I can't remember what year it was. It's funny because uh, I worked on it with the writer Jim Thomas, and his brother actually was a well-known filmmaker at the time. But it wasn't until his brother got involved in that it got serious. But the creature that I was helping to design the creature.
Oh, wow.
How cool.
No, 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 no. No, 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 no. At the time, his vision of the creature was something that looked like this, oozing, gooey, amorphous character. Like in the film that was made where he's invisible,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
and I think he has some things on him that are like almost like creatures that he goes out. that was basically what he wanted. And so I don't know, 100 drawings of this creature. And I'm sitting there, and it's the first time I ever experienced like working on something, drawing it, going, this sucks. This is a really stupid idea, and stuff like that. And so I turn the work in and stuff, and crickets, I don't hear anything. And the funny wrap to that story is that he owed me this money, and I happened to be driving by his house one day, months after I billed him, and I see his car in front of his house, which is a little shack on the beach. And I walk up there and I knock on his door, and I'm like, hey, Jim, hey, and I look and I see something moving in the room, and he's hiding under his desk.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, dude, and he's looking at me. Wait, my eye contact. And I'm like, Jim, I can see you. Why are you?
Right, right.
So he gets up, he goes, dude, I'm sorry. Look, they haven't given me the money yet because I had read that actually the film was going to get produced and Schwarzenegger was going to be in it and all that stuff.
Right.
Right,
I
wow.
just saw the movie announced. Where's my money? He goes, he goes, I know it's not how the film business works. They pay you later in installments. And I said, all right, well, write me a check and call me when you got the money in the bank. But that was so funny because he was so scared I was going to come in like a wild animal and start
Right.
eating people up. Anyway,
Yes.
Jim,
Right,
if
for
you
those-
listen to this, God bless you. Thanks for hiring, but that was a funny story.
Wow.
Yeah, you're a pretty intimidating looking
Yeah,
guy. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, I'm tall. I'm big. Yeah.
Good. So also now Universal hires you. This is your first time going over to the competition around this, Sarah?
That was hard. I think I mentioned also that prior, I think around that time, when did the ET ride open?
Oh,
99.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Sometime.
one of my freelance jobs at one
Right.
point.
Yeah, this is funny.
Yeah, one of my freelance jobs. I'm going to tell funny stories from now on.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
One of my freelance jobs at the time was they were doing test marketing and they were opening up the ET ride in Florida,
Yeah.
and people would go in there and they would see, if you recall, in the pre-show queue, you would see, ET, or is it grandfather or is it ET? I can't remember exactly, but
Someone calling him back to his
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it's an AA figure that's there.
Right.
It was in all his nude regalia, and
all wrinkly.
people were complaining that he looked like a creepy naked old man in the woods.
Yeah.
So I was hired to design a costume for him to cover up his nakedness. So that was pretty fun. But then, yeah, I got hired by Universal to help master plan and continue. Landmark Entertainment had done the original concept design for Islands of Adventure. And so then, for whatever reason, that went over to the Universal Creative, and I was hired to help develop the superhero island. So helped, lay the park out with Brock Larson. And then we developed the attractions. This is where I met Thierry Koo, Scott Trowbridge,
Yeah.
Wow.
obviously Phil Bloom, these brilliant guys.
Yeah.
When they did the Spider-Man attraction, they didn't have enough money to actually create a track or do anything like that. So these poor guys, every time we showed the demo of the film, because they had to, if you recall, they had to sync up the film with the ride vehicle.
Yeah.
So every time they showed that, they would have these poor guys lift up, 8 people in a ride vehicle that was dummied up and walk on this path and show how that whole thing. And they did that in a warehouse in Burbank that had no air conditioning, and the poor souls had to do this 12 times a day for a
Oh my
month.
God.
I felt so bad for them, but hey, they bought the idea, and
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
it was really Thierry, Phil, and Scott that championed that thing along. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
still amazing. In
Yeah,
fact,
just
they
won
got
a
the Thea Award
classic
for the
award, yeah.
classic award, right? Yeah.
Did it really?
Very,
Yeah.
very,
Mm.
very well.
So 1996,
Mhm.
you do a U-turn
And you're back at
WI.
WI.
Back at Disney, yeah. I had the
Seems
last
like
thing I
all
worked
roads
on.
lead back to Disney for Christian.
Yeah, I know. They keep bringing me back in. That was at the behest of Mr. Eddie Sato, so a lifelong friend, and he was like, a bunch of stuff that I think you're gonna love. It's all blue sky concept stuff. We want to build some of these things too. So that was a great thing. It's good to know people. It's good to make friends. So
Yeah.
they think of you when something like comes along that they think is your flavor, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, my last thing I worked on for Universal was the GameWorks thing that they ended up
Oh,
building it.
right.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Sega Game
With
Boy.
Sega. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was I think I told you Spielberg had
Yeah.
seen many version concepts where they brought in like Sid Mead and famous designers and stuff, and he hated everything, and so they gave me about 3 weeks to put together a concept for that, which is the one they ended up buying. But again, that was because I hired the right people and stepped out of their way.
Yeah.
Ah,
There's
okay.
another little grain of wisdom in this business. Hire the right
Yeah.
people, step out of their way.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So
definitely.
I remember that you were with Eddie and you guys had the concept studio.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, you had the best, you guys had the best gig in the company. You know, you were and you were, because you were looking outside of the traditional theme park. I remember you guys did a bunch of stuff for like the ABC studios
Oh, right.
and Eddie, I think partly because Eddie was such a great salesman,
Yeah.
but also again he surrounded himself. Yeah, you guys were like this A team
Yeah.
of just brilliant thinkers coming up with great stuff.
Mhm.
You know?
Oh, it was fun. It was Eddie Sato is he knows how to light the fires, right? He gets
Oh
people
God, yeah.
excited, and I was my role in that whole cabal was I was kind of like a lieutenant. I was sort of we'd take these ideas, and it was my job to actually, all right, let's put these things together and see if we can come with a concept design while Eddie was off, inspiring the throngs of people at the company. So, and
Yeah.
that's one thing I understood. I didn't really have that. He had that, and I could really appreciate that part of him, and which is another thing that I sort of try to embrace. Look at what people are strong at,
Mhm.
value it, understand it, and figure out how do you complement that somehow. So that was a great experience. Oh yeah, ABC Times Square Studios. We actually had meetings in New York City where we, after doing the Times Square Studios, they asked us to help them rebrand their channel. Because
Wow.
Wow.
yeah, they're that was really interesting because we're not TV
Yeah.
network people,
Yeah.
and so we went in there with completely fresh eyes, and they actually accepted the concept that we did, which I don't know if you recall. The basic concept was to make it more like cable TV. I think at the time, The Sopranos and shows like that were becoming popular, and more
Yeah.
people were
Right.
starting to gravitate toward cable.
Yeah.
And our thing was like, you got to become like that. You got to become a little edgier, more relevant. One of the points I made in the meeting, I said, if I turn on NBC, CBS, or one of the other channels, they all look the same.
Yeah.
They all
Yeah.
look the same. It's like you went to the same graphic designer, the same packaging.
Right.
You need to stand out from that crowd a little bit. And so they ended up doing that black and orange, yellow campaign for a while. If people would have to remember that. That was us.
Wow.
But really different work environment in the sense that Eddie and I are both California guys, and we're sort of laid back, in generally speaking.
Generally
So we'd
speaking.
work with these New York dudes, and they were all so aggressive. And I remember one meeting because we would spend a lot of hours in these brainstorming meetings. I remember I got tired of people yelling at each other. And I remember at one point I go, "Dude, can we do this without yelling at each other, man? Uh, like, chill out a little bit." And, and they just started laughing. They said, "You guys are so California." And I go, "Yeah, we are. We don't yell at each other like you guys.
Right.
It's calm
Wow.
down."
Wow.
Well,
Uh,
So you also got to work on Tower of Terror here at DCA. Tell us
mhm.
about that.
Well, they want, their expansion program. They wanted a big attraction there, and Tower of Terror was selected. Worked with the brilliant, wonderful friend of mine, Corey Sewelson.
yeah, we love
Uh,
Hey.
Corey. Hey.
yeah, that was probably the most rewarding, efficiently run. I really appreciate efficiency when it comes to these things, but so
Yeah.
many projects, especially at Disney, go wildly over budget.
Yeah.
This one was understood what the budget was. We didn't have nearly the budget the Florida one had, so we had to cut out that scene where the elevator moves out
Yeah.
of.
Where it moves out. Yeah.
Cut that. But the way that Corey put together the team, his selection of the people, Culture Win worked on that. Chris Carradine.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
he's very daft at like selecting the right people, and that's so important when you cast project teams. And he's again, I can't sing his praises any better. And that was an interesting project. And I did under his sort of guidance, I did the guest experience, from the exterior through to the show scenes and stuff, which are very similar to the one in Florida, but we had to alter them obviously. One of the differences that we had, the one in Florida was in the storyline of the show was built in the 1800s. We didn't have the budget to do this is very kind of in the details, inside baseball kind of detail, but we didn't have the budget to do the faux brick. So we had to update the building period to a later period so that the general walls behind were poured concrete, which is about a tenth of the expense when it
Yeah.
comes to finishing the walls, scenic work and stuff like that. Most people will never know that,
I didn't even know that.
No,
I thought
no,
they were the same time period, like
no.
a 1920s kind of thing.
No, the one
Uh,
in Florida, if you look at the details, it was supposedly built in the late 1800s, and so if the one here is we went to the Roosevelt Hotel down here on Hollywood
Yeah.
Boulevard,
oh yeah, of course.
and it's
Yeah.
based on that hotel, basically. All the
Wow.
coffer designs and all that stuff we
Yeah.
chose. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
Mhm.
that was all during the Paul Pressler period.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and yeah, I gotta say yeah, in spite of him, I felt like, and this is true, no Imagineer ever wanted to do a bad design or bad job, but the challenge is, like you said, of, these budgets were getting smaller and smaller. Oh, you got to rethink the paradigms, we got to look at this a different way, but, through it all, I felt like, whatever you guys, anybody was coming up with, you had to take it on its own terms and say, you know what, they made the best they could
Yeah.
with that,
Definitely.
in spite of the management at the time.
Yeah.
Well, look, he was a retailer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a retailer, and so retailers don't speak the same language as people like us because I experienced this at Paramount to a certain degree. Uh, when you're talking to retailers, they're thinking 6 month turnaround. When you're talking to theme park people, we're thinking 4 year turnaround.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot more, financial investment
Yeah.
before you get to getting your money back. So
Yeah.
that was a tough time, Joe. I totally agree with you because
Yeah.
you go to meetings and pitch stuff, and they're like, again, blank stares. And you're like going, well, if you look at this through a retailer lens, it's not going to look good.
Right.
But I don't think Walt Disney himself did that either. So.
No,
No, not at all.
no, no,
He,
no, no.
he's who I'm trying to make happy,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
the retailer.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so we're gonna put the time
Yeah.
machine in fast, a
2003.
little faster speed here because we're running out of time. We still want to cover some ground with you here.
So you start a new company now, and your name, if you want to work in the Middle East, is a little iffy.
Mhm.
You come up with a new company.
And
Yeah,
a
so
new name.
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I
No.
was going to say 3113.
Yeah, let me try to speed this one up. And so between 2003 and 2018,
Yeah.
I opened up a company, and so it was going to be Christian Hope Design, but then a lot of the project coming in were in the Middle East, and we sort of put our heads together and go, oh, maybe Christian Hope Design isn't going to work over there. So
Yeah, right.
my wife had
Okay.
this idea of renaming it 3113, which is the address of our street. So 3113 Studio was created then, and this is where I met Julianne Ramadan. This is where I met Jacob Glazer. We were basically a small studio that we provided design to be a design partner to Universal, Disney, all these companies. That was really the goal there. I didn't want to hire on a bunch of staff. Really, what my goal was to do was to actually use their staff. Like if I worked on a Disney thing for Beijing or Universal Park, I said, let me use your staff to draw these things up and develop these things. So sorry, my dog is barking. I'm sure you can hear
That's
that.
okay. And I
Uh,
don't want to get you in trouble. We forgot to mention that you met the lovely Colette when you
yes, a long time ago, back
Oh,
when I worked at Paris Disney. This is my wife of 30, almost 36 years.
wow.
She was an architect that worked at Disney on Main Street, and then also she was working on the Big Thunder with Pat Burke, and they brought her in because she was an architect. And if you recall, Big Thunder is basically a big structure, and so they needed an architect to work on that. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's where I met her. And I think I told you guys before I would do they asked me to work on Big Thunder too, some show scenes. I would draw stuff in my little concept stuff to get her attention, I remember. And she didn't even notice. Oh, another thing I should tell you, when I went to go give her some drawings, I walked into her office and Herbie Ryman was sitting right next to her. They were sharing an office.
Wow.
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 And I said, "Holy crap, you're working with Herbie?" And she goes, "Who's that?" She didn't know who. She grew up in Brazil, and she's from Lebanon.
Oh,
She grew up in Brazil, so she didn't know the lineage, of
right.
me. And so I was like, "Yeah, it's
Wow.
Herbie Ryman. He did the original."
He
Wow.
inspired your entire career.
Exactly. And
Wow.
so she goes, "Oh, well, he's a very nice man."
Wow.
Wow. So
Uh,
some more of the greatest hits that came out of
Yeah, what did 3113's
13.
greatest hit?
oh God. Well, I had an ongoing relationship with Universal, supporting them. Disney did a lot of
Yeah,
stuff with them. Did a spaceport concept design for Richard Branson. That was cool.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. Like, hey,
Disney
Dad, I designed
Springs.
the spaceport for Richard Branson today. I
Uh,
worked with Ty Granaroli and Branislav Hetzel on that, and Julianne was there as well.
oh, cool.
It was cool. We went out to have you guys been out to their offices out in Death Valley? It's the most
No.
unglamorous place you've ever been in your life. Uh, the Denver airport thing you guys brought up.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Honestly, too many projects to
Yeah,
mention. Just
yeah.
the list goes on and on and on.
The Secret Life of Pets, Dark Ride at Universal Hollywood.
Yeah, we worked on that. So like I had a relationship with Illumination, and so they hired me sort of through Universal to do that. I had done sort of peer review stuff when they were at Fox. That woman,
Okay.
Claudia Melanik, she was at Fox too. I would do peer reviews for like Universal's work, and
Yeah.
I said, don't tell Universal I'm doing this because I don't want them to know that I'm sort of ghosting them.
Uh,
That was interesting. But we formed a great relationship. She was very much like my mother. She's a very kind of wild diva
uh,
kind of character, and so
Yeah.
I was comfortable dealing with people like that. So we had a good time together. And then she eventually hired me to redo the design that she didn't really like, the one that Universal Creative did for Minion Land for Beijing.
Oh, right.
oh, wow.
That
Okay.
was one of the last things. And I think Secret Life of Pets was probably the last thing I worked on with them. And Ty Granaroli and myself would go back and down and forth to Florida to help them develop that.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
speaking of Ty, now we're in 2018 and you have a new opportunity with him.
Yeah, at the same time, Universal and Paramount were approaching me to work there, and I'm a very loyal person, so I said, Julianne is coming with me. I've trained her. I've done, I've put 5, 6 years into with this young, talented person. I said she's part of the deal, like it or not. And so Universal said no, and Paramount Ty said yes, and so that's where we went, and we were there for 5 years. Again, along with Larry Wyatt was there.
Wow.
Work with Branislav and Ty and our team to
Yeah.
develop these theme parks. We did like 5 theme parks for China, nothing,
Wow.
at least China, Korea, some other places and stuff. And again, I got to the point where I realized that the company is kind of retail focused, and so I realized maybe it's time to move on because I'm getting on in years, and I figured I don't really want to do this. Kind of retail approach to things. And so this is where I met this, Storyland people. I had met Mel McGowan years ago at Disney, and I was always impressed with him. And, his company is very purposeful in what they get involved in. And this is something that really appealed to me at my stage of life. And so this is why I joined them. And
Oh, that's
since I've
great.
been there, we've done a bunch of really amazing projects, none of which I can tell you about because I'd have to kill all of you.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I think this brings us to the time where you get to philosophize a little bit
Yeah.
and talk, give some advice to and inspiration for aspiring experienced designers.
Um, all right. I'm just gonna say that you should, young people, they should again, shut your mouth, open your eyes, open your ears. Be a lover of everything, art, music, science, history, everything, because within all those elements, those stories, those characters, those moments in time, those pieces of architecture, things you notice, if you notice things, they will feature into the stuff that possibly later on you're going to get, a chance to express in whatever it is that you're doing. So
Mhm.
I think you need to look at all those things and really appreciate those things. Find something to appreciate in everything.
Yeah.
Food. You know, it's anything you can do to find something to appreciate and you know, put that in your Rolodex in your head, you know, and because it comes out in different ways. Because if you're going to do what we do, you're going to be asked to design things that are going to call upon those moments
Mm,
and give them back to the guests and stuff like that.
Yeah.
great
Um,
advice.
have a lot of humility. Uh, I think that I've seen a lot of artists and creative people sort of flag out their career because they're a little too more egocentric. And I think if you're able to sort of keep a level head, you'll do well. You have a long career. And that leads into my other thing, which is very important. It's they don't teach you this in school. It's all about relationships. You know,
Yeah.
it's about friendships. It's about relationships. So Brock Larson told me one time something that was very true. He says, "Our business is like a lifeboat that we're all in, and when somebody falls out, you got to pull them back in." And I thought that was very appropriate to what
Wow.
his approach, and I adopted that as my approach. And so whenever I, see people that are, creative cohorts in this weird conspiracy of ours, you try to figure out a way to make them successful too, right? You know, it's important to do that. You know, and a way to do that is to be able to recognize what they're good at, what they bring to the table. So that's about as wise as I can get at the moment.
Well, we're gonna force you to still be a little
One more.
wiser because we have our final question here that we ask,
Yeah.
all the time, and
Yeah.
that is,
So with
what-
all of your, decades of wisdom, all these clients, all these projects, you've traveled around the world, you've seen everything, you've worked on so many great things. At its essence, fundamentally, what, Christian, do you think makes a guest experience
timely yet
timeless?
timeless?
I don't know. I have to go. I'll see you guys. Well, emotions
Yes.
are timely and timeless.
Yeah.
Again, I go back in my mind to the time that I was first inspired by Disney. I went on Pirates of the Caribbean ride, and you come down the flume, you see the ghost, driving
Yeah.
driving the ship. I remember crawling over my father to keep my eyes on that scene. I mean, we were in the front of the car, and
Yeah.
I was crawling over people, that strangers I didn't know, just so I could see that because it totally put me on that deck of that ship. It totally grabbed me, and it created this. I don't know if wonder is an emotion, but it created this emotional sense that I had while I was tingling. I was like, wow. And of course, I was a little kid. I didn't understand any of that stuff. And so later on, when you think about it, you sort of ruminate on that. You're like, how did that happen? That kind of led into, my appreciation toward experience design. And experience and emotion are
Yeah.
right there. They're on the same level. And so I think you have to think about, what, scenes in films that made you cry or laugh, or times
Mm,
you saw something that made you rise to your feet, in
Yeah.
applause.
Yeah.
Think about, try to touch those moments. These are all intangible things. So how do you take intangible emotions and turn them into form,
Mhm.
or experiences? And so emotion is the fuel that leads into all those type things. And so um, I hope that was a good enough answer. Look, I want to say emotions because all the projects I worked on, I don't want to diminish or disrespect any of the projects or project teams I worked on because they're all wonderful experiences that had their own unique features to them. So I think that what I was always searching for is that emotional connection to whatever that thing was when you're a kid, or you allow yourself to
right.
dream and suspend disbelief. And so that's
Yeah.
always fascinated me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Perfect.
We feel exactly the same.
Thank you so much,
Yes,
Christian.
Christian.
Wow, another master class by the
Yes, yes,
master.
absolutely.
Thank
Wow.
you.
Christian, thank you so much.
All
Stick
right.
around. We're going to do some Q&A, but right now,
Where are we headed off to?
where do you want to go?
I think let's go to DC, not because of the political
Oh.
situation there. The Washington
The
Monument.
Washington Monument was finished today. Yeah, we better go back and see that.
Okay,
That'd be
very good.
cool.
All right, Christian, thank
Christine.
you.
Have a great holiday
Okay.
season.
Yeah, happy holidays to everybody.
2025.
Yeah.
Bye for now. Bye.
All right. And we want to thank Christian, obviously, for being here today. And we hope you guys enjoyed the flight. If you have questions for Christian, stick around for our live Q&A in just 60 seconds. And on behalf of Zeitgeist Design and Production, we thank you for spending your time with us on the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. If you enjoyed the journey, please check out all 40 of our time travel adventures on our YouTube channel. or under the Zoomcast section at zeitgeist-usa.com. They're also available as podcasts wherever you listen, and tell your friends. We want to wish everyone the happiest and healthiest of holidays and invite you to join us again on Friday, January 24th, 2025, when our illustrious guest will be producer, author, and former president of Walt Disney Imagineering, the one and only Bob Weiss. Happy New Year, everyone.
Get it?